Looks like we're going to have a rough show today, a real rough show. It's Dog Day on Winsenburg on the weekend, and we're going to celebrate really smart dogs. How smart is your dog? We're going to find out from the author of the book, Canine Stein, and she's also written a book called So Your Dog's Not Lassie? Amy, didn't you like my dog impersonation? Let me hear you do a dog impersonation, Amy.
See, I have a dog. I can't do dog impersonation.
Well, let me hear you do it. Okay, Steve Locker, come on, let's hear you do the same. There, that sounds
He's
much
good.
better. Betty Fisher is our first guest. She is the author of So Your Dog's Not Lassie and Canine Stein, Unleashing the Genius in Your Dog. And Betty, I really enjoyed these books, and I was surprised to see that dogs can learn up to 50 or 60 commands. And most of us think, they can learn 2 or 3, but you're saying the dogs are very intelligent, aren't they?
Oh, yeah. It's a different intelligence than ours, of course. But, yes, their capacity for learning, just like people, is almost unlimited.
Unlimited, really? I mean, they're smart.
Mm-hmm. You're never going to teach them to build a rocket, or anything like that.
But they're smart. They're smarter than we think. That's what you're saying.
Yes, very definitely.
Are certain breeds smarter than others?
Certain dogs are smarter within any breed. There is a range. And it's not so much breeds that are smarter. What people equate with intelligence a lot of times is the willingness to please. Because a dog who wants to please you is going to try hard to do what you're trying to teach him. A dog who doesn't particularly care, if he doesn't think it's interesting, he's not going to put forth much effort. And so we think they're not very bright. And a lot of the breeds that have been bred to work for man, like the retrievers, the working dogs that do the herding and all that kind of thing, they're selected specifically for their trainability. Where the breeds that were bred to do things like the hounds go out and follow a trail, the terriers to go hunt game, vermin type things, and the fighting dogs, they were never bred to listen to man. Man just took them out and said, okay, do your job.
So you're saying don't mistake trainability for intelligence.
Definitely not.
So maybe a dog isn't as trainable, but it may be just as or more intelligent than trainable dogs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes smart dogs figure out how they don't have to do what we want.
Oh, just like kids, you mean? I've got a couple teenagers now, and it sounds like my teenagers. They figure out how to not do what I want them to do, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
Can you judge a dog's intelligence by tricks that it does? I mean, we sometimes see a dog do amazing tricks, and we think, boy, that's a really smart dog.
No, possibly. But you don't know whether it's just he's just training, doing what he's been taught, or if he's really, really smart. There are other indicators of intelligence. Mm-hmm. Like I've had dogs that if you've got a fence that you can see through, and the dog wants to come on the other side of the fence, and he just stands there and he tries to go through the fence. Well, the gate's open 4 feet down the fence. Where the smart dog goes, I can't get through here, let's find the opening.
Right. So,
things like that are a little bit better demonstration of how bright the dog is.
But I think you said in one of your books that dogs actually can think in some abstract terms.
I believe so.
Not the same way exactly as humans, but they actually do process. They think things through.
Yes, I believe that. I have seen dogs. There'll be several dogs lying around, and there'll be a dog bone. And then you'll see one dog get up and go over and start sniffing something in the corner, and the other dogs will go see it. Yeah. And then the first dog just goes and gets the bone and goes off with it. See, now that was a plan.
That's a smart dog.
Yeah. Or if he just walked over and gotten it, somebody else would have jumped up and, that's mine, I want it.
Yeah. Now, you really have 2 books here. One is called Canine Stein, and this has a fun section where it talks about how you can test to find out your dog's intelligence. What are a couple of the little tests that you can give our listeners today so that they can do this at home and find out how smart their dogs are?
Well, one thing you can do is take a piece of food, preferably something that your dog likes, and show it to him, and then in the other room or someplace where he's not looking, hide it, like under the edge of a sofa or behind a curtain or something.
Okay.
And then bring him in and say, find it. Maybe give him a couple pieces first to get him going. Mm-hmm. But you hide it where he really can't quite reach it. Does he just keep trying to grab it with his nose? Say it's under the sofa. Or does he try to reach with his foot? Does he go around the other side? Does he try different strategies?
So you're saying an intelligent dog would attempt different things.
Right. This one isn't working. What else can I do?
Whereas an unintelligent dog would just sit there and stare at you, probably.
Either that or just keep trying futilely.
Yeah, just stick his nose under the sofa and can't figure out any other way to do it.
Right. You know, and start barking frustratedly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's another simple test that they could do?
Well, the little one of just taking a fence and seeing if they can find an opening, that one works pretty well. And that is really an indicator. And I've had corgis that just stand there and bounce up and down and say, I can't get through, I can't get through.
So take them to a fence where there is an opening somewhere down the fence. Put them in a part where they can't get through and see if they can figure out where the opening is.
Yeah, kind of stand on the other side and talk to them or call them and see if they come running around.
Now, some of the tests in here are fairly involved. And you're not only trying to figure out the intelligence level, but you're also doing some training in this, aren't you?
Yes, you really are. And that's the hidden agenda in this book, if you will, is so many people feel they don't have the time or they don't want to put the effort into training. But dogs that just sit in your backyard are just like patients in institutions. Their minds just kind of sit there and do nothing. And they don't have a really good quality of life. But if you teach them things and play games and stuff, their intelligence will actually grow. I mean, they've actually measured this.
Yeah, but Betty, I know people who say, my dog can't do anything. I tried, and my dog can't do anything.
There's a couple reasons for that. Number one, they probably didn't try long enough. You know, dogs don't learn things. Some dogs need a lot of repetition before they actually learn it. And they may have started out in a level that was too difficult. If you want to teach your dog to roll over, you don't just tell him roll over. Nothing's going to happen. So you start out by getting him to lie down and then just lay on his side and then get where he'll just roll up onto his back, little bitty increments.
Do you actually physically take him and turn him with your hands?
Actually, one of the best things you can do is take a really good treat, like a piece of hot dog or a liver cookie or something, and while he's lying down, keep it real low to the ground, take him till he turns his head around to his side, and then start bringing it right up over his back, and he'll usually just follow it with his head and tend to roll.
Yeah. So, and you can really use treats to teach dogs a lot of things, can't you?
Oh, yes, because it's a bridge. It's a
food is a motivator.
Bridge.
Yeah, that's where when you say dogs can even think in abstract terms. To me, a dog just plain wants food, and if you can somehow figure out a way to get it food in an unusual way, then it'll do a trick.
Yeah, that's
But that's
really
not
true.
thinking. That's just animal instinct.
No, that's not thinking. No, I agree with you. It's very nice for us that it works.
Yeah. Now, what do they respond to? Do they when I give a dog a command, does the dog listen to my actual words or tone of voice or facial expression, or what are they responding to?
Everything. This is one of the difficulties with training that people are not aware of. Dogs learn in total context. The surroundings, the tone of voice, the time of day. I swear if there's 2 trees in the yard, virtually everything. And so you can get them to do something in your living room, but then you take them over to your friend's house, and your dog goes, huh? We never did that. And they discovered when they started doing all this work with the dolphins, they'd get these beautifully trained dolphins, and they'd take them to a new facility, and the dolphins couldn't do the tricks because it was totally out of context. And the other problem is dogs really don't speak English well. Some dogs learn words a lot better than others.
You mean dogs don't hear English well?
Well, it's kind of like if somebody's giving you commands
They don't
in
speak
Spanish.
English at all, I hope.
Yeah, they just, but they learn all these the body language. They are much more tuned to body language than we are. And so the body language and the tone of voice and everything
so
influences.
it's not the specific word as much as the tone and
No.
our expression. For instance, we had a dog once that loved to chase squirrels. And when we wanted to get the dog really excited, we go, where's the squirrel? Where's the squirrel? We just say it real fast to make the tones. We wouldn't even say the words, where's the squirrel? We just go, where's the squirrel?
Right.
Where's
See,
squirrel?
all the excitement and
And
everything.
all of a sudden, the dog would jump up and start barking crazily, thinking there was a squirrel outside. And he had gotten used to the tone and the whole sound and the excitement level, right?
Yeah, a lot of us that do obedience competition, because we get nervous and stuff, we give the wrong commands. And usually the dog does the right exercise anyway, because it's all in context.
Interesting.
Or if you have multiple dogs and you call one the wrong name, he usually responds.
Yeah. Betty Fisher is our guest. She's the author of a couple great books. One is called Canine Stein, Unleashing the Genius in Your Dog, and that's the one that has the tests in it. And then for the dogs that aren't quite as intelligent, she's got So Your Dog's Not Lassie. And we're going to open up the phone lines now because we're going to give away some copies of the book today. We have one of the Canine Steins and one of the So Your Dog's Not Lassie. And here's what we're going to do. We want to hear stories from you. How smart is your dog? Tell us something smart that your dog did. Or how dumb is your dog? People just love dogs, don't they? Betty Fisher is our guest. The phone lines are going crazy here with stories of really intelligent dogs or dogs that have some learning difficulties. And Betty, I think I heard some puppies in the background there. What are you doing there at your place?
I have 4 bulldog puppies that are 9 days old.
Oh, and they're sitting in the room with you there?
Mm-hmm.
Because I heard little squeaks in the background.
Yes, that's what it is.
Well, a little later I want to talk to you because you do have bulldogs, and that scares some people, but you seem to love them, and that's all how you got into writing the book. So we'll talk about that in a few minutes. Right now, let's go to the phone lines, and David, you're up first. David, do you have a dog story for us?
Yes, I want to tell you about my dumb dog, Lumpy.
Lumpy?
Yeah. He always rode in the back of the pickup, and to get him to jump in the pickup, I said, get in the back. And I always backed into the driveway, so the tailgate was
right
towards the house.
Sure.
Well, one day I drove into the driveway, and I told him to get in the back, and he tried to jump up on top the hood of the truck.
Oh, because you had driven in the front.
Yeah, and the darn dog, he fell off, you know, and he had the weirdest look on his face, like saying, well, geez, I got in there yesterday, why didn't I do it today? But anyway, that's about it.
That just shows how they learn in context.
Right.
The truck is always in the same position.
Right. So if you change it, so Betty, you're saying his dog isn't extremely intelligent. He needs to do some training.
He's a dog who's very much into habit.
Right. He's into habit. Thanks.
He's a dog that we love tremendously.
That's right. Thanks, David.
You betcha.
And Betty, that is one thing I think I got out of reading your books is that sometimes the dogs that aren't the most intelligent can be the most loving, though.
Oh, yes, and they're sometimes the easiest to live with because they don't think up variations on your rules. Yeah.
They just do what you say or just sit there.
Mm-hmm.
Sherry,
they're
Cher is up
mellower.
next with our guest Betty Fisher on WHO. Hi, Cher.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. Tell us about your dog.
Well, we have 2 Samoyeds and 1 German Shepherd. And with it being summer, we spend most of our time in the basement. There's a family room down there.
Yeah.
And they're inside dogs. And they get cookies, dog treats, 2 times a day. And when it's time for them to get the dog treats, they all start switching around and scratching at the door because they go outside. And then when they come in, they have their cookies. So they all get to go outside. And then they sit there and moan and howl and everything until we let them back in to get their cookies.
So they know when it's time for treats.
They know exactly what time.
You mean you don't even have to say treats or anything? They
Nothing.
Just know.
They just start. They know what time it is.
So they have a little clock somewhere inside them.
I think one of
dogs
them's
tell
got a
time
secret
very well.
decoder watch.
Yeah, you bought them a watch or something.
I think so.
Betty, is that true that dogs can know time like that?
Oh, yes. Yes, when I was a kid, we had a dog. We lived in Tennessee, and the dogs did run loose there way back then. And he would always be on the porch at the time that we came home from school. He knew exactly what time we got home.
Yeah.
Thanks, Cher.
Thank you.
And make sure
they
to
always know when it's mealtime.
stay tuned to WHO because later in the show we'll be awarding copies of Betty's books, Canine Stein and So Your Dog's Not Lassie. Kim is up next on News Radio 1040 WHO. Hi, Kim.
Hi.
What's your dog story?
Well, I have a golden retriever female who, amazingly enough, was raised in a kennel. I didn't get her until she was almost 2 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And it took us all of like 10 minutes to teach this dog to go to the bathroom outside to fetch a ball. My husband was sitting there just playing ball with the kids, and she wanted to chase the ball. It took us all of like 10 minutes. And now the youngest one, 4 years old, can go out, throw the ball, and Amber will go and bring it back. She just loves it. And what is amazing to me, I took her back to the kennel where we bought her. My husband told her when we brought her home, he said, Amber, you will never have to go and stay at this place again.
Yeah.
You're coming home with us. You've got a home. Yada, yada, yada. He's kissing up to the dog. Well, I took her back up there to have her bred. This is a very outgoing dog, loved us to death. I took her up there as soon as I got her out of the door of the car. My very outgoing, aggressive dog became very quiet, tucked her tail between her legs.
Yeah.
She knew. She hadn't been there for a year. but she knew where we were taking her.
Isn't that something?
And just was absolutely livid until I took her back to the car after we had taken care of what we came to do. And she got her back in the car, and she realized I wasn't going to leave her, that Mom promised, and I meant it. We're not leaving you, babe. She was fine.
That sounds pretty smart.
Just as soon as I got her back in the car, and she lays under my computer table at my feet all during the day. If I'm sitting here working at night, she sleeps in the bedroom, on the floor by our bed, or us up on the foot of the bed, guarding the family. She's taken on her family. It took her, what was strange though, it took her 2 weeks to attach herself to us. She would sit in the kennel or lay on her little blanket, and she would rather have wet on herself than get up and go to the bathroom. For 2 weeks, and then we left to go to church, come back home one night on a Wednesday night. We got a tail leg out of her. We thought, what's the deal? This dog hasn't communicated for 2 weeks. What's the deal? She was so happy to see us, and from then on, it was just totally downhill. She decided that we were coming back, and we loved her, and it was, from then on, it was
neat.
Smooth sailing.
Thanks, Kim. Betty, is that true of a lot of dogs that are from the kennel, that they're hesitant at first to attach emotionally?
Yes, because they've tried to communicate with people, and it hasn't worked, and so they just kind of shut down. We see this in horses a lot, and so they just, I'm not going to bother because you won't listen to me.
There's a little period there where trust has to develop, right?
Yeah.
And Betty, we were mentioning about games that you should play with dogs. That's one way to not only test their intelligence, but also to help them learn things, right?
Yes.
What are some good games for dogs?
Oh, let's see. Well, a lot of dogs do like retrieving games, like chase the ball, and that kind of thing. Some dogs prefer keep-away games where you play between you. You throw the ball back and forth, and they try to get it. Although we had a bulldog that if you played Frisbee like that and she didn't get the Frisbee, then she grabbed you. Had to be pretty nimble to play with her.
You mentioned in the book musical chairs. How in the world do you play musical chairs with a dog?
You know what? I've forgotten. That was one of Suzanne's games. There's two authors on that book.
Yeah, there's a co-author on the book, so she came up with that. Well, it's just so strange to have musical chairs. You also had basketball roll, where you actually have the dog.
Actually, you can, particularly with groups, you can play games like that, and the dogs do get into it. They'll learn, like you've got a spot or a piece of cardboard or even a chair to run over and sit in a chair. And the dogs can actually learn that. They'll run for the chair.
Yeah, it says in the book that you have your dog on a leash with the handlers, so you've got people involved, too. The people control the music plays, the handler and dogs walk around, the music stops, and the handler and the dog have to find a chair.
Right.
And
yes, now I remember.
Hopefully the dog's going to sit down quickly, and eventually that's what the dog will learn. Because dogs are essentially creatures of habit, right?
Yeah, and they do like to play games. They get competitive.
Let's go back to our phone lines. Aaron, you're up next with our guest, Betty Fisher. Hi, Aaron. Tell us about your dog.
I have two dogs, Max and Joy. They're both Shetland sheepdogs. And we try to play catch with them, and we throw the ball, and sometimes it just bounces off their heads.
Oh, you're trying to get them to just catch it in midair. I think I would use a treat.
Either retrieve it or catch it.
Yeah,
I think I would use a treat first.
You mean like throw treats to them?
Toss a treat up. So that, if a ball hitting them in the head, that's not a lot of fun. And some dogs catch very, very well, and some dogs don't catch at all.
So try treats, Aaron, okay?
Our dogs don't really like treats that much.
They don't? Oh, my
What about
goodness.
a piece of hot dog?
What's the favorite thing your dog likes to eat?
Probably bread or something.
Bread. Well, that'd be easy. Just take a little bread,
roll it up in a little
cut
ball.
up the bread, right. Just toss that to them. Then they can learn how to catch. Good idea. Thanks, Aaron, for calling in. Lee, you're up next on Winsenberg on the Weekend. Tell us about your dog, Lee.
Yes, we have a dog named Sweetie. She's 13 years old, and she's almost totally deaf, but she knows hand signals, so it's not such an inconvenience.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she does real well with it. You point at something, and she'll go get it. And, but anyway, she will go to the bathroom in the backyard on command, and she won't eat food until you tell her to. She waits. And
does she do any tricks?
Well, I think that's a trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. She'll dance. She turns around and rolls over
sweet.
and so forth, jumps up. We have a little song we sing, and she does the dance.
Neat. That's neat. Thanks, Lee. So, Betty, she's saying essentially that hand signals do it. It doesn't have to be something that they hear.
Oh, no. Dogs work beautifully on hand signals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of some of the advanced competition uses hand signals totally. And in agility, people use hand signals a great deal to direct the dogs.
Arlene, you're up next on WHO Radio. Tell us about your dog, Arlene.
Well, I don't know if this is a trick, but I have a miniature dachshund, Heidi, and she likes to sing. She joins in the family whenever there's a birthday party, singing happy birthday.
Are you serious?
And when she hears the Star-Spangled Banner on television, she's in her basket, covered up with a blanket, and she'll look at me and see if I'm going to sing, and if I do, then she'll join in.
Does she carry a tune? That's the question. Or
no, not really. No, it's always the same song over and over again.
Maybe she sings opera. Our next guest is going to talk about opera. Maybe she'd sing along on opera, too.
Yes.
Well, that's neat that the dog sings. That's great.
Okay.
Did you teach this to the dog?
No, she just did it naturally.
Neat. Thanks, Arlene. Betty, is that unusual?
No, a lot of dogs tend to be very vocal. They want to join in, but it does show that's one of the tips for teaching tricks is you find out what the dog kind of tends to do naturally. And we've had dogs that do a bow, and it's just a natural behavior in bulldogs.
Right.
So you start catching it, and you can teach the dog to bow on command.
Now, people may find it hard to believe, but you started all this with a bulldog. You knew nothing about dogs when you started all this, right?
Well,
you just had a stubborn
dogs.
bulldog.
Yeah, we've always had dogs at home, but I always wanted a bulldog, and I tended to teach him obedience. And I didn't know that you weren't supposed to be able to. But my dog Fang was incredibly bright.
Fang?
Yes, his name was Fang. But he was very, very bright. But a lot of the traditional methods of I tell you what to do and I make you do it and then you'll do it, they flat just didn't work. Because independent dogs and real dominant dogs, just the fact that it makes you happy just doesn't cut any ice with them.
Okay.
And the fact that you try to make them do it, then they just get their back up, and they're not going to do it on principle.
And that's part of this book, So Your Dog's Not Lassie. It's something to help people with independent dogs.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily dogs that aren't very bright.
Right,
they're
just
often
difficult.
Extremely bright, yes. They just don't know why they should bother.
Right. One more call here, and this is from June. And June, you had a rather serious question for Betty, right? Hi, June.
Hi. Yeah, I have a little Shih Tzu. She's 2 years old, and she's in the hospital with kidney failure. And they're talking about, they're going to do some more tests on her Monday, but they're talking about a kidney transplant. And I was wondering if there's anybody out there that had a dog that had that done and if they had success with it or not. Or
Well, maybe ask Betty. Betty, have you heard about kidney transplants?
Well, medically, they can do almost anything with dogs that they can with people. So I'm sure it would be possible. The thing that I usually try to think about is what's the prognosis out the other end? Now, this is a very young dog, so she has the prognosis of, quite a long life.
Mm-hmm.
If they do a kidney transplant, what is the survival rate? Have most dogs only lived 6 months or 2 years? What is it? And then the other thing that always concerns me with animals is about their quality of life.
Yeah.
These surgeries are very serious. The recuperation time is very long. There's a lot of pain and suffering. And do I really think the prognosis at the other end is worth putting my animal through this?
Maybe what we'll do is we'll get June's phone number, and then if anybody has any advice for June, maybe their dog went through this, they could call WHO, and we can get them in contact with June, okay? So Amy will get June's phone number, and you could call us at the station here at 284-1040 if you want to talk to June about this. Betty, it's been a lot of fun to have you on. We appreciate it.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it very, very much.
And you take care of those little puppies, those little bulldog puppies, 9 days old.
Oh, I will.